Lest We Forget by me, Jerry Curry. Details of project. Select a controversial American figure from our era of study, then record a 5-minute minimum YouTube presentation that explores that person's life and reconsiders his or her historical legacy here in the 21st century. I chose Jackie Robinson. Jackie is the first black man to have played in Major League Baseball. In 1947 in New York City, he was the first black man to play in the World Series of Baseball. He was the second lieutenant in World War II. He paved the way for blacks to be introduced to Major League sports. He received Rookie of the Year in 1947, and in 1949, he became MVP of the league. He is a 6-time All-Star and a World Series champ in 1955. He played with the Brooklyn Dodgers from 1947 to 1956 and has his number 42 retired by all MLB teams. He is also a member of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. My source: a biography by Jackie Robinson called I Never Had It Made. This book was written in October of 1972 by Jackie Robinson himself, and his final pages were sent to publisher a week before he died. My book, I Never Had It Made by Jackie Robinson. Early life of Jackie and his family. Jackie was the grandson of a slave and the son of a black sharecropper. Jackie's parents were married in 1909, and his father worked on a plantation for $12 a month. Jackie was born on January 31st, 1919. Jackie's father became a half-cropper and started to make a better living for Jackie's mother and 5 kids. 6 months after Jackie was born in 1919, his father told his mother he was going to visit an uncle in Texas and never returned. Later, his mother learned that he left with a neighboring wife. 16 months later, they moved to California. Jackie came from a very poor upbringing, sometimes barely had any food to eat. A young Jackie was part of a gang that they called the Pepper Street Gang that was filled with different racial groups except whites. They were all resentful towards the whites and their privileges. After his pastor began to add more programs to his church, it drew more of the youth to quit gangs and come to church, including Jackie. Life of Jackie. In high school, Jackie was a 4-sport letterman and loved to compete. He got offered a scholarship to many schools, but chose to stay near home and go to UCLA. He became the first 4-sport letterman in history of the university, playing in basketball, baseball, football, and running track. After 2 years at UCLA, Jackie left college thinking that no amount of education would get a black man a job. Jackie played for the Honolulu Bears, a lower league football team in Honolulu, Hawaii, that was integrated and came home from the 1941 season just 2 days before the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He then became a second lieutenant in World War II. During the war, he experienced many racial whites that he learned to ignore. After getting honorably discharged, he joined the Kansas City Monarchs, a black pro team. Branch Rickey in the 1940s was the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was the reason that Jackie got his shot to play for the majors. Mr. Rickey had an idea that one day the blacks and whites could play ball together without controversy. When he first spoke to Jackie, he told him he wanted him to play in the majors and that he had to have the guts to not fight back. He wanted Jackie to convince the world that the box score was the only thing that mattered and not the color. Jackie needed to convince the world that he was a gentleman and a great ball player. Mr. Rickey explained many situations to Jackie about how he would be taunted and called the N-word over and over again, but he could not react. He told Jackie if he react, it would ruin everything and set back the blacks from major sports for years. Never had it made. Although Jackie was a very good ball player, it was never easy for him. He endured many racial encounters in all years playing in Major League Baseball, and basically his whole life. Jackie was called the N-word many times and taunted during games. Many teams pitched at him rather than to him, and many tried to spike him whenever they could. During his time in the service, he still was treated badly while trying to serve our country. At one time, he was court-martialed because he wouldn't move to the back of a bus. After many incidents in the Army, he was finally honorably discharged. Jackie said it best, that although he had money in the bank and a good home and a very loving and supporting cast of people around him, he never had it made. He says he never had it made because he had to fight for everything he got. He also felt that many African Americans had nothing and were still fighting against racism, and therefore he couldn't have had it made. How Jackie should be remembered today. I believe that Jackie should be remembered as an American hero. Jackie had to endure so much from this country that many should never have to endure. Jackie overcame racism and showed us that although almost an entire country was against him, he still continued to play the game and never gave up. Day in and day out, he took abuse from those around him and still managed to live his life in the best way possible. He never gave in to all those who taunted him, even though many times he wanted to, every day. He broke down barriers for blacks and started a movement for many blacks to have a better life in America. I still love Jackie Robinson today and look up to Jackie. Although I myself am not African American, I still love his story and find it sad that such an amazing person had to go through all that just to live in America. I think it's sad that our ancestors treated those of different colors so poorly just based off their color of their skin. Controversial career. I don't feel as though Jackie Robinson is controversial today. To me, I feel that Jackie is a hero to many in the way that he walked through life and never gave up. If you ask me, I feel like those who treated Jackie so poorly for his color are the ones who are controversial. Many who played with him and against him treated him in ways that no man should ever have to endure. The fans as well treated him so poorly. So if you ask me, Jackie isn't controversial. Just his career in baseball in that time was controversial. The end.